we're like, oh my God, there's not enough time.
Oh.
And they score again.
Yeah.
Again.
It's like, oh my God, I forgot to tell you something else.
Oh, I think that's cute. You guys are really cute.
I think it's more than cute.
New footage from Justin Baldoni's camp and a new response from Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' side has just heated up this already bitter legal war going on between the stars. Who's telling the truth about what happened on the set of It Ends With Us? And how much of this fight is going to play out in the public? We're going to break down these new updates for you right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, so we have some big updates in our continuing coverage of the Justin Baldoni-Blake Lively legal saga. We have new footage from the set that was released by Baldoni's legal team arguing this proves his claims against the actress. We also have a new gag order request from Lively and her husband, actor Ryan Reynolds, who is named as a defendant in this litigation. And we're going to have a great guest who I'm going to bring on in a little bit to go through all of this. But first, brief backstory to get you up to speed here. By the way, I say brief because we've done a lot of sidebars about all of the different lawsuits here. I encourage everybody to check them out on our Law&Crime YouTube page. But first, brief backstory here. So this all started with when Blake Lively, the actress, first filed a civil rights complaint and then an official lawsuit against her co-star and the director of her movie It Ends With Us, accusing Justin Baldoni of sexual harassment, a hostile work environment on the set, and organizing a retaliatory PR campaign against her after she spoke about Baldoni's alleged misconduct. That's her main allegation. And she accused Baldoni of making inappropriate comments about her appearance, improvising intimate scenes on set, talking about pornography, coming into her trailer unannounced, including while she was breastfeeding. And she says, in terms of the retaliatory campaign that he allegedly spearheaded with a PR specialist and a crisis management expert, in her filing, she included screenshots of messages between the defendants that she obtained through a subpoena. Messages like, I'm having reckless thoughts of wanting to plant pieces this week of how horrible Blake is to work with, just to get ahead of it. Or how about this, where Baldoni, quote, wants to feel like she can be buried, with a response from the crisis manager, you know we can bury anyone. Now, Baldoni not only countered this with a bombshell lawsuit of his own, but he basically accused Lively of deliberately misrepresenting situations and conversations to ruin his reputation, and also that she slowly took control over the film that he directed and produced. Because in his lawsuit, he included text conversations as well that he says refutes Lively's claims, such as a text where she allegedly invited him into her trailer while she was breastfeeding, or other conversations purportedly showing that she refused to meet with an intimacy coordinator and he had to be the middle person to work out the scenes with her. In other words, he tried to refute all of her allegations, and included in that is newly released footage from his lawyer, Brian Friedman, which is what we're going to get into. I should also tell you, by the way, that he sued the New York Times, too, for defamation, because they published a piece titled, We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Machine, and this was published the day after Lively filed her complaint. And he said this was deliberate, that this had been worked out with Lively, and that the publication produced a misleading report on selective evidence, that it didn't publish the full context of what was happening. Hey, so we want to keep on following this Baldoni Lively story for you. And with that, I have to thank our sponsor, Upside, because it's with their support that helps make episodes like this possible. Now, Upside's awesome. It is a free app that gets you cash back when you buy daily essentials like gas, groceries, food, real cash back. It's money that appears in your Upside app that you then transfer right into your bank account. So if you look here, I used Upside to find a gas station near me. I claimed an offer on the app, paid with my credit card, followed the steps on Upside, and I got cash back. It is super simple. You can use Upside at all different kinds of places, restaurants, convenience stores. So to find out how much you could earn, you click the link in the description to download Upside, or you scan the QR code on screen. But make sure to use our promo code SIDEBAR because you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Now, we have dedicated, as I said, multiple sidebars to each lawsuit, including another one where a former publicist has sued Baldoni as well. And I encourage everybody who's interested in any of this, wants to do a deep dive on all of this, go check it out. All those episodes on Law&Crime's YouTube page. But right now, I want to focus on some major updates, including this newly released footage. But I'm not going to do it alone. I want to bring on friend of the show, fan favorite, Elizabeth Vulaj, Law&Crime's general counsel, our attorney, who has been following the case so religiously. Elizabeth, good to see you. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
So as of right now, who do you think, whose story do you find more compelling? I mean, you've seen the different filings. Whose story is more compelling to you?
So initially when these claims first came out, when she came out with her complaint, I think a lot of people were shocked. They were thinking this really doesn't look so great for Justin Baldoni. But I have to say in his complaint, at least based on the text messages and emails he provided in his complaint, he does show evidence of refuting a lot of the allegations, ones that you just mentioned, where he produces text saying she invited him into her trailer to go over lines while she was breastfeeding, that she refused to meet with the intimacy coordinator. In her complaint, she said there wasn't even an intimacy coordinator. And then based on this newly released footage, I didn't really see evidence of harassment as much as just sort of an awkward interaction on camera.
In other words, would you say he's making some really good claims or defenses to the idea that he created a hostile work environment, that she maybe was taking control of the movie? What about, do you think he's done a thorough enough a job, an adequate job, a sufficient job of refuting the allegations that he and his team were behind the retaliatory campaign? Because she produced those text messages that when I covered it the first time, I said, these look really, really bad. It looks like it was a deliberate campaign to make her look bad in the press and try to cover up, all of the allegations of fat shaming and all things like that. Do you think he's done a sufficient job of trying to refute that claim?
Yeah, I think there's two main threads that he's using, at least that I saw in his complaint and his defenses. So one is his attorney provided a lot of different examples of social media posts that Blake Lively herself posted during the promotion of the film. So one of their big defenses is they're saying she brought this negative backlash on herself. She chose to promote her alcohol line and her beauty or hair care line rather during a time when she's promoting a film about domestic violence, knowing the link that happens between alcohol and domestic violence. There were a lot of social media posts in the complaint proving that. But then also I think you see an entirely other thread where he's saying, look, this isn't a smear campaign. This is just PR, right? We know how PR works. A PR professional's job is to be able to put out positive stories about their client and sometimes maybe plant negative stories about the opponent. So where do you draw the line between crisis PR, which he's saying he had to hire a crisis PR team because he's claiming he got backlash, versus a smear campaign? How
much of this is fighting in the court of public opinion versus actual going to trial? Why do I say that? Blake Lively chose to start this legal action. You could make the argument that she did it because she was getting a lot of negative press. You see on social media people going after her. It was her opportunity to reset the narrative and explain her side of the story. But if you take his allegations as true, why would you file a lawsuit knowing he's got these text messages and the footage that might refute your claims? Because his perspective could be, I don't want this going to trial. I'll put out everything right now for the public to see, make it look Blake Lively's allegations aren't true. I don't even care if this goes to trial. Maybe pressuring her to settle. Which do you see in the sense of how much are we talking about this actually, $250 million claim here, $400 million claim here, this is going to go to trial, versus we are fighting this out in the court of public opinion?
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. I heard someone on a different show say that there's two different trials, one in the legal courts, one in the court of public opinion. And one of the things that his attorney is claiming in his complaint was that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds had pressured Justin Baldoni and his team once the film was out and she was getting this negative backlash to put out a statement, basically, accounting saying we behaved poorly on this set, there was misconduct, which they refused to do. And I think the thinking behind that might have been, hey, if they put out this statement taking some of the blame, the backlash against her on social media might start to lessen a little bit. They refused to do that, saying we did nothing wrong here. And then I think that's where a lot of the court of public opinion is coming out. And I also think, his complaint against her was 200 pages with tons of text messages, emails. That's fairly long. I haven't seen a federal complaint that long. So I think that's a big part of it.
I want to go to the footage now. This is what we really want to focus on, or one of the things we want to focus on, and then we'll get into the request for a gag order, which I think is really interesting. So I have to give you some context about this footage before I play it. So here is how Blake Lively explains this in her complaint. It reads, quote, "On another occasion, Mr. Baldoni and Miss Lively were filming a slow dance scene for a montage in which no sound was recorded." And by the way, their characters were, romantic interest in the movie. "Mr. Baldoni chose to let the camera roll and have them perform the scene, but did not act in character as Ryle. Instead, he spoke to Miss Lively out of character as himself. At one point, he leaned forward and slowly dragged his lips from her ear and down her neck as he said, 'It smells so good.' None of this was remotely in character or based on any dialogue in the script, and nothing needed to be said because, again, there was no sound. Mr. Baldoni was caressing Miss Lively with his mouth in a way that had nothing to do with their roles. When Miss Lively later objected to this behavior, Mr. Baldoni's response was, 'I'm not even attracted to you.' But Baldoni has a different take on this, because in his complaint, It says, as they were acting in this montage scene, Lively continued to break character and speak as herself rather than as Lily, which was extremely confusing for Baldoni, who was trying to balance directing the scene within his artistic vision while also acting in character while filming and trying to get Lively to do the same. Lively apologized for the smell of her spray tan and body makeup. Baldoni responded, "It smells good," and continued acting, slow dancing as he believed his character would with his partner, which requires some amount of physical touching. Lively took them out of character again and began to joke about Baldoni's nose, which he laughed off and joked in turn, even as Lively joked that he should get plastic surgery. Lively incorrectly alleges that this scene was filmed without sound. Baldoni was wearing a microphone and the entire exchange is captured on camera. Any suggestion that this scene was filmed in any manner other than pure professionalism by Baldoni is unequivocally countered with actual evidence. Her allegation of sexual harassment is a documented and knowingly fabricated lie. Okay, so with that in mind, two different perspectives. I want you to watch for yourself because Baldoni's attorney, Brian Friedman, released what appears to be the raw footage of this interaction. So first, this is about him allegedly dragging his lips against her and the smell comment.
Let's score another.
I'm getting beard on you today.
I'm probably getting spray tan on you.
It smells good.
Well, it's not bad. It's my body makeup.
And there's also this exchange about the nose.
I feel so nosy.
I know.
And noses.
And my nose is so big.
Yes. I was hoping that we could address this. It's not too late. Just gotta shut down. We gotta call an insurance month and just deal with that.
Yeah.
And then,
God.
just kidding.
No, it's true. That's why we hired Jenny Slate, too. Our noses are.
All right, so Elizabeth, after watching that, whose narrative does it support more, Blake Lively or Justin Baldoni?
Yeah, so I've read both complaints, and when this footage came out, my initial thought was this really tends to prove what his version of events is in the complaint. So it's really clear when you watch the footage that they're acting out a scene, right? Because you hear him speaking to people in the background, people are saying action, he yells cut at the end. It's clear that they're filming a scene for the movie. It's supposed to be a montage scene, so there's no actual dialogue between their two characters, but you know, their job is to portray these two characters who are in love and going through this sort of chaotic relationship as the movie progresses. So, you know, one of the things that she's saying is, you know, he leaned in too close to her, he caressed her, he said it smells so good. It paints sort of like a creepy, inappropriate picture. Yeah. But then in his version of events, he's saying, look, I'm trying to stay in character. This is a montage scene. We're trying to show these two characters who are attracted to each other. And when I watched the footage, it tended to veer more towards that description. And I think that footage he used to counter the harassment claims. And then also one of his claims where he's saying she's trying to hijack the movie, which goes into other claims in his complaint.
The counter argument is, look, she's a great actress. She might be hiding what she's feeling. She might be hiding because she wants to get this scene done. She's a professional. If she's really, you know, not comfortable about what's going on, sure, she's Blake Lively. She could stop the production, tell them no, but you know, she also has to get the job done. Could she be masking it? Could she be hiding what she's really feeling?
Yeah, there's a possibility. And actually, when this footage came out, her team came out and said, well, this footage just goes to prove what we've been alleging all along. You see that she's clearly uncomfortable. She's laughing. She's trying to say to Justin Baldoni, I think our characters should just talk and maybe not necessarily caress each other. So there is that possibility as well. And that's what her team is claiming.
By the way, I acted at one point in life. I don't encourage everybody to go check out my acting. It's nothing great. It's very awkward. I think that awkwardness also plays into this as well, right? I mean, particularly if you're a scene where there is no dialogue, right? There's not supposed to be. It's going to be covered over music. But in these scenes, sometimes actors joke about personal things just to heighten the mood, But I think that awkwardness is a factor to consider as well, right? I
think so. So when I watch the footage, I have to say props to actors because being in these kinds of scenes, it must be so uncomfortable when there's no dialogue to play off of, right? So I think that's one of the things that she's alleging is throughout her complaint is that she was made to feel uncomfortable. It was awkward for her. But, it also works both ways. He could use it to say, what he's saying in his complaint is I was trying to direct the scene. I was trying to stay in character. She kept breaking. This made it really difficult for me. So I think if you've got good lawyers on both sides, they can kind of spin spin it either way.
But the counter argument to that would be, okay, maybe she really was uncomfortable. She was trying to get through the scene. But she was the one who made a comment about his physical appearance,
yes.
the nose comment. And, reverse it. You could have felt uncomfortable about that. And he, jokes around about his own nose. He said he has a big nose. And then he mentioned Jenny Slate, the actress in the movie. That nose comment, I think, is important, too.
It is. So I think that could be interpreted both ways. So when she makes a comment about his nose, he says in his complaint, well, I wasn't, because she's saying initially he made fun of her appearance, he fat shamed her. And then in his complaint, he's saying, actually, it was the other way around. She made a comment about my nose, implied I should get plastic surgery. But then at the very end, you hear him make a comment and saying, oh, yeah, my nose is big. That's why we hired Jenny Slate to be my sister, implying that he's saying Jenny Slate has a big nose. So it's, you could say she was sort of making fun of him and his appearance, but he also made a comment about one of the actresses.
But she was also saying get plastic surgery.
Yes.
But let me ask you about this. So his big allegation is, you say, Blake Lively, there was no intimacy coordinator. Well, I have messages that I was meeting with this intimacy coordinator. You didn't want to be a part of that. I have to now relay that choreographed situation with you on set. It's not entirely clear from this, but could it help explain why he's leaning in and caressing and going into her neck? I mean, what do you make of that from that footage? How much does that explain his narrative?
Yeah, it might be. So the role of an intimacy coordinator is fairly new in the industry. It really happened in the wake of the Me Too allegations back in 2017. So, I think the role of an intimacy coordinator obviously is to make sure that there is no awkward back and forth between the director and the actress. And obviously, the director supposedly having more power than the actress. Here, since he's alleging that she didn't meet with the intimacy coordinator, that might be why he's trying to sort of freestyle it in the scene. I don't know from experience how much involvement intimacy coordinators have, if they work on mostly really intimate scenes or even just montages like this. But, his claim that she didn't meet with the intimacy coordinator might be why maybe they had to freestyle this.
Is it appropriate for them to be releasing this material into the public? Let me amplify that. The idea of releasing this video as opposed to at a court of law, releasing it for the public to see. And we also know that Brian Friedman, again, Baldoni's attorney, has announced that, and this is reported by outlets like Us Weekly, that they plan to launch a website containing all of the correspondence and videos in this case that they say is going to refute Lively's claims. I'm curious your thoughts on that, because then I will go into Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' response to that, where they believe that he's actually breaking professional rules and there should be a gag order. You think it's appropriate to do it like this, to release this information?
Yeah, I was a little surprised when they released this footage. So obviously one of their main goals is to sort of establish his defenses in the court of public opinion. That's clear. But, it's common for attorneys to go on talk shows like Brian Friedman has and talk freely about the case. But in terms of releasing evidence like this to the public before the trial goes underway, it is unusual. I haven't seen that happen that much. So I was a little bit surprised by that.
But it could be a way to pressure them to settle.
That was also one of my thoughts as well, is that people are saying, they're trying to clear his name. Yes, but it could also be a tactic from his attorney saying, hey, this is just the beginning of the material and evidence that we have. You might want to think about settling or withdrawing your claims.
The reason I ask you is because I want to now talk about if he's doing anything wrong, because Friedman is what he's doing has come into the attention, of course, of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds' lawyers over at Wilkie, Farr & Gallagher. If you don't know what this is, let me tell you, this is a very high-powered firm, okay? Very. And they wrote a letter to the district court judge who's overseeing this case, essentially requesting a gag order. I think that's a fair assertion, because they tell the judge, look, Lively filed her complaint with the California Civil Rights Department, and at the same time, a cease and desist letter was sent to Baldoni and the defendants, like Wayfarer, his production company, demanding, quote, that they immediately cease and desist all unlawful conduct toward the Lively Reynolds parties and their affiliates, including their harassing and retaliatory media and online campaign against Miss Lively. And they attached a copy of that letter. And they also write, quote, immediately thereafter and virtually every day since, Mr. Friedman has given television interviews, appeared on podcasts, issued inflammatory written statements, and leaked information, including, remarkably, documents as banal as document preservation demands to third parties to the Hollywood press and tabloid media. Those statements not only continue the campaign of retaliation that was the subject of Miss Lively's first cease and desist, but they contain numerous new false statements about Miss Lively and others. A list of public statements issued by Mr. Friedman, which is surely incomplete, is attached as Exhibit B, and it is attached there to the letter. And they argue that Mr. Friedman continued to make unprofessional and false statements, so Lively then sent a second cease and desist letter, sent it directly to Friedman, and they provided a copy of that letter too. And they write, the second cease and desist letter directly addressed Mr. Friedman's ethical obligations, notified Mr. Friedman, as well as the managing partner of Mr. Friedman's law firm, that he had defamed and engaged in further unlawful retaliation against Ms. Lively and demanded that he immediately cease and desist from making further defamatory and retaliatory statements relating to Ms. Lively. And they argue that none of this, what he's doing, is protected by the litigation privilege, which basically protects litigants from defamation claims. It makes sense because in every lawsuit, someone's going to be making claims that the other side will say is not true. You can't allow everybody to just turn around and sue for defamation for that. But here, Lively and Reynolds say, or their lawyers say, there's an exception here. This is not allowed. So the letter continues. Since the Wayfarer parties and Mr. Friedman received the cease and desist letters, they have continued their harassing and retaliatory media campaign with almost daily media statements or other releases to the press. Earlier today, the Wayfarer parties leaked a video to the media that they have asserted is designed to refute the allegations. They have further indicated that they intend to create a website to increase publicity around the exhibits filed. As counsel for Ms. Lively has made clear, these releases only reinforce the claims Ms. Lively advanced in her original complaint and continue to advance the campaign of retaliation alleged therein. But there is a more fundamental problem with Mr. Friedman's litigation via press statement strategy. As Ms. Lively's counsel have attempted repeatedly to caution Mr. Friedman, federal litigation must be conducted in court and according to the relevant rules of professional conduct. And this is where they say that he may have violated rules of professional conduct, like the rule against out-of-court statements that could likely substantially prejudice a trial or a jury. And then it goes on to say the Lively Reynolds parties intend to seek an appropriate protective order to govern further proceedings in this case. But given the imminent harm caused by Mr. Friedman's misleading and selective statements and leaks, we respectfully request that this court schedule a hearing as soon as possible to address the appropriate conduct of counsel moving forward in these two related matters. What exactly do you make of their argument? Are they asking for a gag order, and do you think they'll be successful? What do you make of what they're saying?
Yeah, so I definitely think they're asking for what's essentially a gag order. So the way that it works in the Southern District of New York is depending on which federal judge you have to make a request to the judge for a hearing. You can't just automatically file for a motion for a gag order for some judges. So I think that's what they're asking for here. I think the likelihood of it happening, it might be plausible, right? So generally federal judges are a little bit cautious with gag orders because it triggers, First Amendment, protection of free speech, protection of freedom of the press. But a lot of times in high profile cases like this, judges are more apt to grant them because I think their biggest worry is about tainting the jury pool, because no judge wants to be on a trial if this eventually gets to that point where they're trying to find, fair, impartial jurors, and it's taking weeks and weeks to do that because of what's played out in the media.
Yeah, it's an interesting response. And by the way, there's so much reporting on this. The Hollywood Reporter even reported that apparently Friedman had actually been in a legal action against Baldoni at one point, which raises potential conflict of interest situations, but maybe not. We'll talk about that on a different date. I will tell you, our research indicates that there is an initial conference set for this February 12th, 2025. So maybe we'll get more information then, maybe some information before. But Elizabeth Vulaj, thanks so much for coming on and breaking down the latest in this ongoing legal war that we're seeing play out.
Yeah, it's going to continue. Thank you for having me.
You got it. All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.